Hello and welcome to Hardie Party of 5.5. How's it going, babe?
I'm doing pretty good.
Got a question for you.
What's that?
What'd you want to be when you grew up, when you were a child?
What did I want to be when I grew up? There were several things.
You do have, honestly, you're multi-talented. I can see you wanting to go in any direction.
Yeah. I think there's a moment I wanted to be, I think like a lot of kids, I wanted to be a baseball player.
Okay. But you could have done that.
Yeah. I wanted to be a comic book artist. That was really the biggest one for a long time. I think of all the things that I also wanted to be a set designer.
Yeah, I remember.
Which I think is a little bit what I do with my job, doing scenic stuff for corporate like shows and stuff.
Designer?
I really wanted to do theater, like
theater.
Design the sets that are used in plays and musicals.
You'd be so good at that.
Yeah.
Things that can flip around and be something else. Oh, you'd be so good at that.
So I'm doing artsy kind of stuff.
Yeah. In
the job I have, but what did you want to be?
I mean, I don't honestly remember a time that I didn't want to be a hairdresser. I do. I don't remember that, but I think as a young child, I probably, because I showed quarter horses, I could have easily said I would like to grow up to like be a trainer or something like that. But obviously I didn't stay in that.
Yeah.
And then I also really liked choreography, which I don't know. It's always stuck with me. You know, I still do some of that today. So
right now, what would you want to be?
Oh my goodness. A race car driver.
A race car driver?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want to, here's a very simple thing. I just want to own a food truck. That's really all I want.
Yeah, you are like that. Well, I pulled up a couple little articles and they're pretty similar on like what kids want to be when they grow up. So I'm going to give you just a quick top 10.
Okay.
So number 10, singer musician.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Number 9, writer.
Okay, I could do the writing, the singing. That's not, nobody wants to hear that.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
Number 8, an athlete.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
Number 7, a doctor.
Never wanted to do that.
I didn't really either.
No, it's a lot of work.
It was never kind of Number 6 is surprising.
What?
Ballerina.
What?
You're asking children.
Yeah.
And tutus are big right now. So number
Okay, hold on. Tutus are big right now, really?
Yes, girls make them out of their little tool, like they make the little ones that they tie around their waist.
Okay, did not know that.
Huge deal.
Okay.
Number 5, a chef, and that is kind of up and coming. I actually have like a handful of clients. By handful, I mean like 3, which is a lot of clients that either are chefs or are going to school to be a chef.
Okay.
Which, did you have friends growing up there going to chef school?
No, they worked at McDonald's and Jack in the Box. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that is, I can see that's kind of up and coming.
Are you a chef at McDonald's? You're not really a chef, are you?
You know, probably, right. No, you know, probably why that's true is because of all the food shows.
Oh, yeah, like
we didn't
Netflix.
Have those. Yeah, we didn't have those when we were young. So everybody wants to be the next Gordon Ramsay.
It's more glamorized now.
Right. Number 4, a firefighter.
Never wanted to do that.
No?
No.
Number 3, astronaut.
Okay. I would do that right now.
You would do that right now?
Yeah.
Number 2, an actor. And number 1, a teacher.
Teacher, really?
I know.
Okay, you would think astronaut would be at the top of all that.
Yes, well, it should be, especially considering our guest today is Nicole Stott. She's amazing. She is one of 600 people that have been in space. She has done a spacewalk.
Okay, I want to clarify this a little bit. 1 of 600 people in the history of mankind, not just like people that are hanging out now.
Yeah.
In the history of mankind, she's one of 600 people that have been in space.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
She talks about what they eat up there. She even like tried to paint up there. She was successfully painted up there. You're going to love this interview. You're going to learn so much. Please enjoy this interview with Nicole Stott. Nicole Stott, thank you so much for joining Hardie Party of 5.5. What a perfect time to talk to you with the SpaceX thing that just happened, which we watched, by the way. So we'll talk about that.
Good. Sorry for the discombobulation of our previous plan.
When we heard that was happening, we're like, we got to go watch that.
Yeah, we were.
And it didn't happen that day. So
right. That's okay. That's okay. We were happy that you alerted us to the fact that it was happening, so we could tune in on that. So
cool.
I'm a hairdresser, and I know a lot of like kids like always want to play hairdresser, but surely the next thing is doctors and astronauts, like as you know, occupation when you're a little kid. So how did you decide you wanted to become an astronaut?
Wow, I think long path to it. I'll try not to make the story as long as the path was, maybe. But I mean, I grew up, I watched the first moon landing, right? I have vivid memory of that. And thankfully, my family shared that with me. I'm very thankful to have parents that shared what they loved with me. I think that's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even at 6 or 7, you realize that's a really extraordinary thing. Like, oh my gosh, people are, you know, we walked outside and looked and you're like, oh my gosh, people are walking on the moon. Pretty wild to think about it.
Yeah.
But it was a long time before I even thought at all about astronaut being, you know, even a possibility. And this is from somebody who grew up loving flying. I mean, my dad built and flew small airplanes, so we were out at the airport all the time as kids. I developed a love of flying, wanting to know how things fly. Went off to school to study how airplanes fly. And while I was there, I'm like, man, and I went to school right up the street from the Kennedy Space Center in Daytona. So I'm like, man, if you want to know how airplanes fly, why would you not want to know how rocket ships fly? And it all just kind of went from there. And I was very fortunate to have a job at the Kennedy Space Center working on the space shuttle and then later on the space station parts and getting all of that ready to fly to space, which meant you're also getting it ready for astronauts to fly it to space. And so you're seeing astronauts come through. And I finally got a glimpse. I'm like, and it took me a while. I'm a little bit slow because I've been watching this for a while. And I'm like, man, you know, astronauts, 99.9% of their job is not flying in space. It's down here on Earth. And a lot of that was a lot like what I was already doing as a NASA engineer. And so I'm like, you know, the little light bulb went off. Well, maybe I can at least consider it.
Yeah.
Because up to that point too, I was like, even as I was seeing them, like, oh my, you know, I had this like superhuman, you know, impression in my mind of who they were and what their experience was. And I'm like, man, that's for other special people. You know, why would they ever pick me? I haven't done anything near as, you know, impressive as what any of these people have done.
Right.
And thankfully had a couple mentors that encouraged me to pick up the pen and fill out the application. I mean, the one thing I had control of in the whole process. And I am so thankful to them. I really, to this day, love to tell people, man, there are, and you guys know it, I'm sure, there are people out there that know more about us and our abilities and what we have to offer than we may know ourselves.
When someone's looking on the outside, they can see it easier than the person that's in the middle of it, you know?
Yeah. We have I don't want to say that. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I always hope it's not true in others, this kind of ability to say no to ourselves, you know, to take ourselves out of the possibility of something. And man, we got to do at least that one thing, right? That puts us in the running. So very thankful for that.
So once you get accepted, is it like a 2-year training period for astronauts? Is that
yeah, I mean, you get accepted, you leave the job you had before, right? You know, so I think about this picture of my astronaut class and this group of people who all came together somewhere along the way, figured out, oh, I want to fill out that application, all these different pathways to it. And every single one of us had to essentially leave what we were doing before to come work for NASA. I mean, I was already working for NASA, go work for another group, but you know, we had medical doctors and oceanographers and geophysicists and fighter pilots. They all left what they were doing to come to NASA. And then as an employee of NASA, and you're considered an astronaut candidate at that point. And what the, you know, the ASCAN is what, you know, what you're considered. And in a nice way, it's AS. And so it's about, I mean, you come in with the understanding that it's about 2 years of basic training, I guess, learning all about the systems on the different vehicles you might fly, the science, the people and organizations, and all of that, and how to do the basics of, like how to do a spacewalk, how to fly in the robotic arm, or working inside the space station as a crew, and those kinds of things. And then at some point you get the hands waved over you, thou art an astronaut, even if you haven't flown in space yet. You like transition from this ASCAN category to astronaut. And we all kind of look at each other like, wow, shouldn't you have to fly in space first before you get that? And so, but they do distinguish, like at that point you get a silver astronaut pin. And then once you've flown in space, they award you with the gold astronaut pin, which means you're a big A astronaut, I guess. And yeah, it's incredible. And then you never know. I mean, it's kind of a mystery what the timing is going to be for being actually assigned to a space flight.
Yeah.
And for our class, which was, gosh, it seems so long ago, which was 23 years ago, back in the year 2000, we were told it would probably be 5 to 6 years before we got our first flight assignment. And sadly, that turned into 9 to 10 years. And not because it just took longer, but because sadly we had the Space Shuttle Columbia accident in 2003. And then that just pushed, I mean, we weren't flying for a few years, and that just pushed everything out. And so, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a rambler, you guys. I'm a rambler.
No, that's great.
How many people start out as little ass cans, turn into big ass cans? How many do the same number of people go in the program that end up 2 years later, pretty much? Or is there
pretty much? It's a pretty rare thing for somebody to not, graduate from ASCAN to little astronaut, right? And then to go on to become the big A astronaut. NASA does a really good job with the selection along the way. They're investing a lot in you, so they want to have some assurance before they even bring you in that there's going to be success there. And then for those who haven't, there have been, and it really, I mean, I'm having to struggle to think about. I mean, the one or two, I mean, there's either personal reasons or career reasons. I mean, there's some legitimate reason why that doesn't happen. And it's not necessarily because NASA says, no, we don't want you.
No, ultimately, you have this bond with this small group of people that you have really like life with. I mean, yeah, that's really cool.
So I have a follow-up that's kind of fun, and then like a more serious one. When you were talking about the training and you mentioned the arm, I thought of Spies Like Us with Dan Aykroyd and the Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, I think, and their faces are like melted to the. Is that the way you're thinking about it? Y'all had to do that? What was that?
Well, we do the centrifuge training, and all of us are worried about not looking good, right? Like that look. We do some for space shuttle training. You have the opportunity. Now, as a crew, you don't have to do it, right? But your commander decides, are you going to do it? I think every crew does it. But you go do this centrifuge. It's one of those vehicles that kind of spins you around to give you that simulation of the force you'll feel launching. Oof. And you go through the whole kind of trajectory of launch. And on the space shuttle, the G force, or the amount of force on you, is limited to 3 Gs, so 3 times the force of normal gravity. And so when you're launching, so remember, how normally, you're like driving along in a car this way, or on an airplane on the runway, but to launch, we rotate vertical, right? So basically you're laying on your back when you get ready to launch. And so the fortunate thing about that, and there's many, but the one is that G-force, that loading, goes through your chest instead of down through your head, like it would if you were pulling G's in an airplane. It's much more difficult to manage the G's, when it's on your body and stuff, if it's coming through your head like that way. But through your chest, it's a little bit easier. Doesn't mean it doesn't feel like 3 of you aren't sitting on top of you, right? That 3 times, it's going to make you feel like you weigh 3 times as much as you do. And so it's not quite as bad. And like I said, shuttle limits to 3 on launch and landing, unless you get into some to some off nominal thing that could potentially have you loaded up more. So not so bad. You go through that whole profile. But we do, we train in Russia too, over at Star City. The Soyuz is one of the spacecraft that all of the partners fly on. And they put you through some mandatory centrifuge training. And then they load you up to what you might see if you went through one of the off nominal landings. And so that's like 8 or 9 Gs. And so now imagine you've got like 8 of you sitting on top of you, right? So you do have to really kind of consciously think about, okay, I need to breathe properly. I need to be thinking, really breathe properly if I start to see my vision kind of coming in. And but it's amazing and I don't know if I ever saw the pictures of what I look like, if that was Chevy Chase or Dan or the guys like Clint Eastwood and company and what
Space Cowboys.
Yeah, Space Cowboys. They do a funny one too. And yeah, I'm sure it wasn't, all that attractive, but that's a joke. It's not about the glamour. It's not about the glamour.
Listen, I've ridden Mission Space at Disney World. Yeah. I'm never going to be able to do anything that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, you know what? Do not let that be the gauge of whether you could fly to space or not. I did that one too, and it's kind of fun, but it's not what it's like.
Not the same. Yeah. It's just, its sole purpose is to make you sick.
Yeah. They did it's all centrifuge based, and it's rough. And yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. No, that's encouraging.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Columbia, and I'm trying to imagine that whole scenario. What are your feelings after that happened? And because you mentioned not many astronauts, most astronauts finish and they do a mission and all that. So after something like that happens, what's the reaction that you have, and how do you keep going after something like that happens?
Yeah, and I mean, I was in college when Challenger happened too. I had family members that were working out at the Space Center, and so had a kind of a connection to that. Then having worked at the Space Center for so many years, knowing the people that honestly believe, like in their heart, that the care and feeding of those spacecraft is their responsibility.
Yeah.
I think it's a risky thing, right? I mean, it's a dangerous thing to do. But in the grand scheme of things, if you look at it, getting in my car and driving to the Starbucks down the street, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but down the road, I mean, I'm putting myself at risk in the vehicle every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's it's a risky thing. I think we go into it understanding that risk and understanding the people that are working on it, trying our best to understand the philosophy of how the program is operated and whether we should feel comfortable based on that. Strapping into the vehicle. And with all of those things, I don't know, the training we do, I think we feel like as much as is humanly possible. I mean, both of those accidents, Challenger, Columbia, were not anything that the crew could have done anything about, right? But in the scheme of things, where there is we feel like as much as is humanly possible, we'll be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
But the question is interesting because for Columbia, especially, I knew all those people, right? So there's this like, oh my gosh, those are friends. Those are, like you would if you lost a family member, right? But all those people looking down us now, they're like, you better get this back going. I mean, you better like make sure that our loss is not the cause of a shutdown, but is the cause of figuring out the problem and moving on, right?
A little bit of a charge.
Oh, absolutely. But it does raise the other serious question of like fear, like are you afraid when you go launch? Are you, when you're in space, is there like a fear of what might happen? And I think it's more, it's the respect, the awareness of all, but feeling like you're trained to be able to deal with that. The fear is for your family. I mean, honestly, as I was strapped in at the launch pad, I'm like, okay, understand what's going on here. There's about to be 7 million pounds of, exploding rocket stuff underneath me that's going to get me off this launch pad and into space and floating, and going to this place where I'm going to do, I mean, I don't think you do it just for that adventure part, right?
Yeah.
You do it because you believe, I hope everybody does it for this, you believe that the work we're going to do there, I mean, it's ultimately all about improving life on Earth. So you're anxious to see what it's going to feel like and stuff. And at the same time, there's this other part of your brain that's like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what my family is feeling like as they watch me do this. It is so much more difficult to watch somebody strap in to a rocket than it is to be the person strapping in,
doing it,
and then in space, to be afraid of something happening to them down here, and you can't get to them, like what every parent fears everywhere, right?
Yeah, when they send their kid to college.
It's that training that you mentioned. You feel like you have a little more control, and the family has no training and no control.
Right.
So yeah. And you speak of family. Tell us about the wave across the ditch. That was something that hit me when I read your book right before you go up and get into.
There's, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to grab it real quick. Hang on a sec.
Okay.
So this is a picture of the second one of those. This is actually, this might not be wave across the ditch. This might be where your family can come out, and it's a blur to me. It might all be part of the same thing. But my first launch was a night launch. And so the night before I think that was wave across the ditch thing. Yeah. And it's just of my son so this was the like doing the little pin somebody's head thing, but he's holding up the space shuttle. It's so cool. That's so that's first one. And so but we had multiple waves across the ditch because we delayed a couple times. So it's such a it's a really emotional thing to do that, because at that point it's really close to launch. It's like the day or two before. You are in quarantine, so you can't technically like really engage with the people that are there for you, other than to be at this distance across the road, waving at them, talking to them and stuff. But I'm so thankful for it. Just that kind of look in the real eyes. And my son, my husband, your immediate family, like if they're of the proper age, 12 or over, they can see you while you're in quarantine. So I got to see my husband several times while we were, in Florida in quarantine, but I couldn't see my son for either launches. He was 7 on my first flight, 9 on the second flight. So there's no like physical, right? And so to be out there like in the presence of him and of my close friends and family, it's a really special human thing, right? That NASA even that's been going on forever, right? As humans with human space flight. And to just incorporate those kinds of things into the whole space tech, launching process, acknowledging the human in human space flight, I think is really important. And I did both times. I broke the law, and I had something to give to my son, like just reached across the line and grabbed hand real quick and gave it to him. But I didn't go full blown, didn't jump over the rope and or anything. But
how long are you in quarantine before your flight?
It's normally it's about 2 weeks total. We start in quarantine in Houston before we come to Florida, and then it's about it's about that final week before launch in Florida. And it's all with proper, I mean, the purpose is great. You don't want to get sick and not be able to fly, or get your crewmate sick, or bring, ickiness to the space station. You don't want to do it. So it makes total sense. But
so the night before a flight, do you sleep much?
I think, I mean, I did. You're restless like you would be for anything. But I think you also are like, man, so I think a lot of the restlessness is like, man, I want to get a good night's sleep, but you're like wired about it, right? And thankfully you get out to the launch pad pretty early ahead of launch. And
how's that day
once you can get all snuggled in, you can actually chill a little bit and nap a little if you want before the countdown really gets going.
So you wake up, you have breakfast with the people, they take you out there together? You kind
yeah. So you wake up as a crew and you generally, so you've sleep shifted for whatever time launch will be. And so, sometimes and they do that in quarantine too. They have this really great system of lighting and preventing you from seeing outside when it's day, when it's supposed to be night for you. And it's amazing how quickly that can discombobulate your whole senses.
Sure.
If you just catch that glimpse of launch or of light before you're supposed to see it. And you all get up together, you go have breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever it might be that your timing is. And they have a cake. There's like a tradition of cutting this cake and with the people that work at crew quarters kind of surrounding you and stuff. It's really nice. And then you all get suited up together in the suit room. And for us, that's getting into those orange suits. And there's a whole kind of traditional walk-out ceremony, kind of wave. And again, your family was someplace completely different watching from the Launch Control Center. And now, I don't know if you followed along with like the SpaceX crewed launches that they're flying for NASA. They walk out of the building where they've gotten suited up and their family is right there.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Is right there at, right behind this line. You're not supposed to be hugging or doing anything like that, but they're watching you get into the vehicles to go out to the launch pad. They're grabbing that little, that hand kind of thing, but they're right there. And, on the one hand, I'm like, oh man, that's fantastic. And then on the other hand, and I'm thinking about the family side of it, man, that's just gotta be, I don't know, it's gotta be really tough to, and you got the cameras on you and, they were all like, you're the center of attention, right? With your family right there. But I think it's a nice thing.
That's so much pressure. You've gone through all this training, but that's the physical training part, but then you've got the mental training, and then you've got all of the nation is watching training, like how to conduct yourself.
I don't know if we get a whole lot of that, but I think you just feel like, okay, just pretend like somebody's watching you somewhere, you know.
You have the awareness that people are watching this and they'll watch it for years to come. So cool. So you get locked in, off you go, and now you're looking at Earth. What is that like?
Wow, there's so many of things. These things are like these overwhelming, impressive, beautiful, like overload of like sensory kinds of stuff going on. And I think the very first time it was when I was floating up out of my seat on the space shuttle after we got into orbit. And I don't remember where we were flying over. It was day. I do remember like seeing Earth during the daytime, but was it ocean? Was it land? A little bit overwhelmed with that. It was beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, glowing, beautiful, all those colors, Earth to be. And I think the first thing that kind of crossed my mind as I floated up though was like, okay, I'm here, I'm alive. That's a good thing.
We made it.
We made it, just the kind of the surrealness of being in this really extraordinary place. And then to have this view out the window to go along with it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was there every day. It was like there was a little bit of that, like, oh my gosh, every day of being in that place. Yeah.
Because there've only been like maybe 600 people that have actually been in space.
Yeah.
So out of the billions of people that have lived, you're like one of 600 people. So that's just crazy to think.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's funny, I don't tend to think about it too much unless we have these kinds of conversations. And then it's like, okay, it's not just 600 people out of the people that are alive right now. 600 people out of the people that have ever lived.
Out of mankind. Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
That's a big deal.
It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. It makes me so happy to think about that. Growing, like more people having the opportunity to experience that, even on these suborbital flights, as we're building up the capability. You think about Blue Origin with the suborbital flights, right?
Mm-hmm.
And guys like Jeff Bezos, they get all this grief about being these billionaires that are spending all their money going to space. Why aren't they spending their billions down here to solve the problems here on Earth, but guess what? They are.
Yeah.
In addition to the going to space stuff, which, oh, by the way, is all about improving life on Earth.
Yeah.
And all those suborbital flights, they're like these little baby steps to getting to the bigger vehicles, to getting to the point where we can have millions of people living off Earth as well, and lifting all of the industrial stuff off the planet into the benign environment of space, generating all our electricity from the sun, but through space-based, solar power, versus having to do all the stuff we're doing down here to make that happen, providing that free, sustainable energy. I mean, it won't be free. We can never say that, but, providing that energy to everyone on the planet. I mean, I look at it, and then even for 5 minutes, these folks that are going and flying, spending their money to do one of these suborbital flights and have literally like 5 minutes in front of that window, not 5 months, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a life-changing thing. And I think what it does is it really should help us open our hearts and minds to the awe and wonder that's around us every day, just right here on the planet too, right? Yeah. Man, somebody can go for 5 minutes, look out a window at the Earth from space and be awestruck that way. We need to open our hearts and minds more every day to what is just looking up even.
Yeah. I was going to ask, are sunsets and sunrises kind of ruined for you now? I mean, now that you've
no,
you still get
not at all. In fact, I love it. I love it even more, I think, because I'll look for kind of, and that's why I try to tell people, I'm like, oh my God, I'll be sitting next to somebody on an airplane and there's some really beautiful sunsets and sunrises, that you just through the window of an airplane that are so reminiscent to me of the way the sun rises and sets, through the window of your spaceship. And I think, I don't know, there's just like this desensitizing that happens, right? Oh, the sun's rising or setting and stuff. But true. Man, I'm really fortunate to live on the water here in Florida on the West Coast, where we get fantastic, sunsets. And I don't think there's a day goes by where if I'm here, I'm not out on the dock looking down the canal to see it. Or if we're fortunate enough to be out on the beach, I mean, it's really cool to see how many people they're making the trek from wherever they are, staying on the beach or living and coming out to the sand to watch that happen every night.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's no better way to me on the planet than to think about, oh my gosh, I live on a planet. Live on a planet.
Scott, have you ever said the words "out your spaceship window"? Like,
no, I would love to. But if you think about it, you were in space like 20 years before Captain Kirk was in space. So,
I know.
So you definitely got.
Yeah. And I'm very thankful to him for the way he shared his experience too.
Yeah, he did a great job of saying that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was, he's a good actor. I don't think he's that good of an actor, right? I think he was honestly conveying what he was feeling he couldn't not do it, right? Did you watch that? I mean, he got out of that. Everybody's like popping champagne bottles and doing all this, and he's like, Jeff, you've got to talk to me. I cannot hold this in. I mean, he was just, and I think it was honest emotion and reflection on what he just experienced. And so I don't think it was scripted at all.
It just overwhelmed me. So you've spent over 100 days in the International Space Station. So take us through what like a day in the space station's like.
Well, every day is a little bit different. Which is nice. It's really busy. Our control center, mission control, has us scheduled from, post breakfast to before dinner, kind of just sometimes on like 5-minute increments of here's what all of you in parallel are working together are going to be doing today. And so, there's a little bit of a, oh my gosh, am I keeping up kind of thing. But then you get into a groove with it and you understand where the flexibility can be in it all. And, but it's always a mix, it's a mix of the science, which is our primary mission there, right? We've got, hundreds of different research investigations going on every day that we're either, totally actively involved with, or we're kind of pushing a button on, or we're communicating about in some way or another. And then there's the maintenance of the space station. We're the ones taking care of, fixing the toilet or fixing a solar array or whatever it might be. We're doing that work.
Yeah.
There is a good bit of outreach activities, like whether it's with a news station or a school, or, like you guys, you actually can reach out to the NASA public affairs people to see if you can get kind of into a, you get like 2 minutes or something, but it's kind of cool, if they, and I think they're trying to do a better job of distributing that to not just the ABC news station that's always, doing it, right?
Yeah.
And and then every now and then you get the spacewalk, or the fly the robotic arm, or a visiting vehicle, a cargo vehicle or another crew vehicle coming, that, those are pretty major events that are happening. But every day it's a mix. It's really jack of all trades kind of stuff. And it's what I loved. Yeah.
Yeah. On the science side, do you do the same job every day, or all of you can do everybody's job? Have you been all trained at all the parts of it, or do you stay on your, do you get to do it, or are you kind of doing your thing every day?
There's a mix of that too. Okay. There'll be particular experiments that somebody has been trained to do.
Okay.
And it's for some short duration period of time. They're going to start it, they're going to finish it on behalf of the investigator down on the ground. There's other things where the scientists want multiple people involved because they're studying us, right?
Yeah.
And the effects of us in that place. And so they want as many of us to participate as possible. So it's kind of a varying range. We do try to have backups for everything. Like, say you get up to space, and there was one experiment that I remember I was the primary person on it. And then with all of the ground training, you didn't really realize that you might need somebody else to help you with some of the things that, that didn't necessarily work exactly how they were supposed to on the ground.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to have somebody as a backup to be able to come in. They at least know the experiment, and they're like, oh, that's not supposed to work that way. Okay, I'll help you with this.
Yeah.
And, but in general, for the science and also for the station maintenance kind of things, we're all trained on the same basic skills, how to use the different tools, the way the procedures are going to be written, how you communicate with the ground about things, what's going to tell you if something's going wrong, the kind of alarms or warnings that are happening with stuff. And so for the most part, you could pull somebody else and say, hey, I need your help with this.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I just feel like, doo-doo today. Could you, could you do this one little task for me? I just need to go chill for a minute, whatever it is. And it's great. And it's so cool. I mean, I'm really looking forward to the day when we can fly the medical doctor and the electrician and plumber and the scientists themselves.
The hairdresser.
The hairdresser. Oh my gosh. You should find some pictures of I'll send you some pictures of doing hair in space. It's pretty funny. There's never really a good hair day in space.
Yeah,
that whole non-gravity thing's a problem. Yeah.
It's one of the best ways to show that you're in this place, right? To have your hair just like up around you, or I wore a ponytail most of the time because my hair was long when I flew too. And there's a lot of Velcro and pumps and fans and things that you just really don't want to get your hair stuck in.
Yeah.
But even with a ponytail, it's like this floaty ponytail behind you. It's so neat. And there's some really great pictures of folks with long hair. Marsha Ivins, she flew shuttle, I don't know, 5 times, I think. And she had really super long hair, and she's got these really great pictures where she's inside the cockpit of the space shuttle, and it's just like her, and she's tiny. So here's her and her little shoulders and head, and then the hair is just all around her, like filling up the entire,
so fun
cockpit there.
Yeah.
But we all learn a little bit. My sister's a hairdresser too.
Oh, really?
Has a great little shop here in Florida. She's amazing. You can tell I haven't visited her recently, but don't judge her by me. And But she taught me a little bit how to use the clippers, because we used either scissors, like I would pull my hair up in a ponytail and just say, okay, cut an inch off, but my crewmates all were getting the,
how did they cut hair
thing.
Did you
the clippers have a hose with a vacuum attached to the end of it, so you can suck up all, you don't want those little hairs floating around in there.
Oh my gosh, what a nightmare.
Another one of those human things, right?
Yeah. So did you cut hair? Did you cut their hair, or they cut their own hair?
We all did both. I cut theirs, they cut mine. We one of my crewmates, Jeff Williams, was already pretty without hair. I don't call him bald. I can't remember. I don't think he shaved his head. I think his hair was just not there. Yeah. But he had like these 1 or 2 hairs that would grow. So we would joke about, we're cutting Jeff's hair today.
One hair.
One hair.
So what are meal times like, and what's the food like?
Yeah, and how do you keep it on your plate?
Yeah. Well, you don't have a plate. So but the meal times are awesome. I mean, they were one of my favorite times throughout the whole missions, because as a crew, we made a point of, and this was for both of my flights, we made a point of eating all of our meals together as much as we could. I mean, there were times where somebody, had a task that pulled them away and they couldn't do it, or lunchtime was kind of hard sometimes for everybody to be able to get together. Yeah. But we really purposefully tried, and it wasn't like, if you don't come to lunch with all of us, you're, the bad guy. I mean, it was just, it felt right for us all to be doing that. It was so nice. And of course, you're floating all around the dinner table. You're not sitting at a table, and there's no plates, because it might be sticky to stick to a plate, but it's not like, you don't want all of it floating around everywhere. Right. I mean, we would do silly astronaut tricks and float food and fly it and suck gummy bears out of floating water and stuff like that. But, for the most part, you've got a long handled spoon and you're digging your food out of a bag. And
that was dehydrated.
Most of it is dehydrated, and that we have either hot or cold water you can add to it, depending on what you need. A lot of it is like the military rations, where it's just ready to eat, but we have a little food warmer that you could warm stuff up in. Don't have a lot of refrigeration up there for food. Don't have a lot of storage for fresh food. So fresh food like an orange or an apple, or even a clove of garlic, they'd send us these things sometimes in the cargo vehicles, and the fresh food was real. I mean, just the smell of it, the taste of it was so delicious. And then I remember the first time we got this thing of garlic, and I'm like, what are we just supposed to eat that? But we didn't. We took it out, undid it, and then got a piece of foil and then stuck it in the food warmer all day, and ended up with this nice soft garlic to spread on our tortilla. And
nice.
And the food tastes good. I mean, there's a nice variety. It's a mix of food from all the different countries. We have 5 international space agency partners that represent 15 different countries working on the station. And so there's food in one way or another from all of those partners. And so there's a nice mix, nice variety. You find the stuff you like. Sometimes you eat the stuff you don't like because you don't want to waste it.
Right.
But really, really good. I mean, and the mealtime was a very special experience.
Yeah. When you got back to Earth, was there like some place you had to eat?
Well, when I got back, before they ask you, like, what would you like to have when you get back? Now, I'll caveat that with the fact that on my first mission, when I got back, it was the day after Thanksgiving. So my family came over. They had, my mom's green beans, that everyone loves, and then the whole smorgasbord of turkey dinner and all of that kind of stuff. Although as a vegetarian now, I might not have. But it was really good. But I wanted a slice of really good, like New York style pizza.
Okay.
And because with all the foods we have and the variety, there's not a lot of mix of textures.
Okay.
So to have something like a crispy crust and the melty cheese and the warm sauce all like in one thing, oh my gosh, that sounded so good.
It sounds good, right?
And And then I don't drink a lot of soda, but if I do, it's going to be a real Coca-Cola. And I use those two words, the Coca-Cola, because it's not Pepsi. It's not, And I wanted a real Coke with that squishy crushed ice. In just the right cup. With my slice of pizza, and they had it for me. It was awesome.
Oh,
that's so cool.
That's so cool.
So while you're up in space, weren't you the first person to ever paint in space?
I don't want to say first person to paint in space. I think for sure I'm the first person to paint with watercolors in space. But there was a gentleman, Richard Garriott, who flew as a spaceflight participant, as a tourist on the station, and he brought up this. He was really cool. His dad actually was an Apollo astronaut, and his mom is an artist. And he brought up this like plastic box and this paper that he stuck to all the walls of the plastic box, and then he just squirted acrylic paints into the box and let it hit however it was going to hit, which I think is so cool. I mean, to me, he doesn't call it painting. I'm like, but dude, you didn't just paint in space, you painted with space, you let the environment, do its thing. Very Jackson Pollock. And so I consider that the first painting in space. There might have been others that haven't come to light, but I think that's that. I did paint with watercolors, which was fun, floating balls of water, and so you dipping your brush into that.
Do you just push the water into the canvas? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. It took a little getting used to. And I wish, there's a number of reasons why I wish I would have activated my brain cell during that whole process of painting. One would have been, if I could do it over again, I would videotape the whole thing, because I think would have been such a cool way just to show what it's like to live in space, how everything floats and how things behave differently, and that you got to keep track of your stuff. And even though it's different, it might not be more difficult. It's just different because of the environment you're in. Very thankful to my crewmate, Bob Thirsk, who took the one picture I have painting in space. But everything about it is different. So instead of dipping your brush into a cup of water, you're squirting out a little ball of water to dip your brush into. And it was so weird because the ball of water is floating. I remember watching it like, oh, this is odd. The ball of water is floating there. And then I'm taking the brush, to dip it into the ball of water. And you're trying to be real careful because you don't want to make a mess everywhere too. And it was the weirdest thing. I'm watching this as I take the brush over there. And before, right before the brush even touched the ball of water, it's like the ball of water wanted to move onto the end of the brush. And I remember looking at that. Now I'm watching this ball of water floating around the end of the bristles, right? And thinking, okay, now I got to be careful with this, because if I just move it, it's just going to fly off. So really carefully take it down to the paint. And right before it got to the paint, it the water moved to the paint. And now I mushed it around and could pull this morphing ball of colored water back onto the brush. And but to your question, if I touched the brush to the paper, the whole blob of colored water would just transfer at one time. So it got, and I wish I would have, the other, thing I wish I would have done is kept those practice sheets, right? Kept all of those. I just trashed them. I don't know why. I'm not painting right yet, and got to the point where I figured out how, just what the right distance was and how to drag without touching the brush to the paper, how to drag the colored water along the paper to make it.
But not actually touching the paper.
Without actually touching the paper with, and almost not even touching the paper with the ball of water, because it wanted to do that same thing. It all wanted to move over at the same time. So there was this distance of, oh, it's kind of touching. Now I can drag it. Really cool.
So you've invented a whole new technique of painting there.
I think so. And but we'll never know that now, will we? Because I did not document it properly.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
That's great.
So the slogan y'all use is from Earth for Earth. So what does that mean to y'all as y'all go up and
I think this whole idea of being off the earth, for the earth, I think it speaks so beautifully to why we do all of this space exploration stuff, whether it's with humans or not, right? Is that ultimately it is all about improving life on Earth. So everything that we're doing off the Earth is for the Earth. The science, the way we've built the space station, you know, to mimic as best we can what Earth does for us naturally. I mean, it is the best example of living off the grid that you can find. And all of that technology that we're using to do that, to generate our electricity, to have clean drinking water, to make sure our air is clean, all of that is being brought back to Earth to employ in some way too, right down here on our planetary spaceship, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's all about. In addition to this just extraordinary way that we can learn more about who and where we are in space together, and the value of that, which I think is huge.
Yeah.
You know, just this acknowledgement of, oh, I live on a planet in space.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't tend to think about that on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I wake up now, my feet hit the floor and I'm like, oh, I'm standing on a planet. That's cool. We're on a planet in space. We're spinning. Yeah. I'm spinning right now at 1,000 miles an hour. And we don't even, it's just because it's where we're supposed to be.
You said that, didn't even think about it.
Didn't even think about it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh. And it's why I love it when kids ask, oh, I want to go to space someday. I'd love to be, you know, in space. I'm like, dude, you're in space right now.
Yeah, you're in space.
You know, you learned it in kindergarten. We tend to forget about it. I'm like, we are on a planet in space.
Yeah.
Perfect distance from the sun to, you know, make this spaceship work for us. And it's so cool.
So
I
just wanted, what was your son's reaction when you the first time you came down and he knew you'd been in space? What was his reaction like?
You know, I don't think his reaction really had much to do with me having been in space, right? Maybe he reflected on that a little bit later, but I think it was, oh, here's mom, you know, she's back from this 3-month trip. And I think it was really useful to involve him, you know, from the time he was born, he was going along with his mom training to go to space, right? And we tried, my husband and I, who was awesome through all of this, like we tried as best we could to introduce him to all of what was going on with that, meet the people, come out to the training, you know, so he felt like he was part of the crew. And so I think the time and space was a little less daunting maybe, or worrisome for him, because he had a grip, I think, on what was going on. I was able to talk to him every day, you know, I was able to have a video conference once a week. And that was funny because I was all like, okay, I could see them and talk to them. And, you know, he's 7. He wants to be riding the big wheel out, you know, hey mom, how you doing? I'm going to go ride the big wheel, you know, and I'm out, you know, and it's like, dude, I want to talk to you. And so I think it was more just, you know, my mom is home than, oh, my mom just got home from space.
Space.
And we did, you know, I did video conferences with his school while I was up there and was able to talk to him on a regular basis. So I think there was the communication was good throughout it all. There just wasn't that physical thing.
Yeah. When you got back, were you like the hottest item at career day at his school? I mean, did you get to go do that? I would be
did.
My mom is.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I scored bonus points because of that kind of stuff, right? You know, calling the class from space. Hey, you know, float around gummy bears and, you know, doing the goofy astronaut stuff.
That's hilarious.
And it was great.
Yeah.
I mean, I really loved that we could do that, you know, that we could, like, it's kind of like us doing this right now, except I was in space. I mean, the fact that we can communicate this way to anyone, anywhere is really special. And we got space to thank for that. Right. So,
Nicole, what is your message for, like, how can we be responsible crew members here on Spaceship Earth?
You know, I think the first step is acknowledging who and where we are, right? You know, that we are all together, you know, in space on a planet. On a planet that's our spaceship. And that we have to, you know, like that we're all Earthlings. You know, only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere. And you know, this whole idea of us building these spaceships, which I'm thankful to you guys for reading the book, because I can sense you get it, right? And this idea that, oh my gosh, we do build them to mimic what Earth does for us naturally. We wake up every morning,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, who's doing the carbon dioxide check? Who's doing the, you know, how much clean drinking water we have? You know, is our spaceship good? And, you know, checking in on everyone, the health and well-being of all of our crewmates.
Yeah.
And it is such a wonderful parallel to what we need to be doing down here on Spaceship Earth. And yes, orders of magnitude with 8 billion versus 7 people on a space station, but that should not stop us, right?
Yeah.
And I think if we wake up that way every morning, like, oh, I just put my feet on a planet. All right, this is my spaceship. What am I going to do today that helps me acknowledge or understand my impact on the amount of carbon dioxide that's in my atmosphere, or the clean drinking water that I have, or the integrity of that, you know, thin blue line. And I really, really do believe that by behaving like crewmates, not passengers, you know, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space.
Yeah. I love that picture. I love the thought of thinking like, I can have a personal responsibility. It's not big as in my mind, I can make it seem like a bigger task than it is, but it really is like individual responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah. Nicole, this has been so much fun.
Incredible.
Really enjoyed it. Love the art behind you too.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it doesn't really compare to your art.
No, it's all relative. It is all. I love it when I get onto something like this and I see art. It's good.
Yeah,
it's good. Using our whole brains, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes, we appreciate you taking time to talk to us and share your stories with us. I'm sure you are. I mean, you're just incredible. Like you have done really cool stuff, and so we thank you for taking.
Well, I hope it helps. I hope.
Yeah, it's been so fascinating.
All right, very nice to meet you guys.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, thanks.
Okay,
all right.
care.
Well, that was incredibly awesome.
It was.
Right?
I know. I still can't believe that happened.
I know. So what are your takeaways?
Well, my biggest surprise of the whole thing is when I mentioned the food, I imagined the food being really bad.
Yeah.
Like you just ate because you had to, there was no taste, and you just like, I can see everybody working at their position.
Yeah.
And just sucking down whatever's in this bag and just keeping
just happen to do it. Yeah.
I was surprised that it was like mealtime.
Creative mealtime.
And the food had taste and it tasted pretty good. So we're getting really close to the Jetsons where you just push the button and the complete meal comes out.
Right.
So we're getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Because I think when I was a kid, it was like Tang and all that, but you knew that came from space. So, and that's not the greatest thing in the world. But I was surprised that the food was good.
Yeah, interesting.
How about you?
I don't want to go in too much detail here, but she said fix a toilet.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, yeah, you don't really have a plumber in space.
Well, I didn't even think about there being a toilet in space. Like, I'm like, oh, we're going to build this. I know, I didn't think it through. Don't look at me like that.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, you're going to build a spaceship. Like the things that you think when you need to build a spaceship. And the things that she added to that were toilet, a little place to heat food, like place to store food. I don't know that, like, I'm just thinking like, I got to get this thing off the ground and there needs to be like, I would be all more fancy about it.
But they took the space shuttle to the space station. So she's talking about the space station.
At the space station.
Well, I don't know. That'd been a good question to know if they had a
toilet
on the shuttle.
See, it's like questionable, right? Okay, so that, and then also I like, I didn't really think that you communicated with your family daily. Like she got to call and to me, that's like once a month. It's time we get to have a chat. No, like it was daily communication. So I didn't really.
And it was so funny that the kid's like, okay, gotta go. Like he didn't.
Classic 7.
But I think that it was cool how they made it like mom's just off at work.
Yeah.
So he wasn't like having any anxiety of what she's doing. Oh, she's just at work and she's going to call me in the afternoon.
Right.
So it was cool how they did it as a family.
Yeah.
And made it a part of the life of their life. So yeah.
Well, I think she made something clear. It's not too late for any of us to be an astronaut.
That's
so
right.
If you have hopes and dreams of doing that, you better get on that. You've got 2-year training program ahead of you. And we hope you enjoyed this interview with Nicole Stott. Share this with any of your friends and family who might even have little kids that want to be astronauts when they grow up. We know it's a big thing. Hardie Party of 5 and a half, over and out.
We'll see you next time.